All right. How are you?
Oh, well, you asked me that already, off camera.
No, I'm asking you now for the civilians.
You asked me that in the green room out the back before. And all right,
The green room.
in the green room beforehand, we were chatting. It's so weird to come out here now and it's all it's like,
I had to take out all the red M&Ms for Tim because he doesn't like those.
I don't normally have other people in the green room with me, but I thought, well, we've been doing a few episodes now, so
If you were a rock star, which you kind of are in some ways,
yeah.
what would be your green room rider thing? You know how you always hear the funny stories about what people insist on in their green room. What would be your rider?
I like the idea of it being quite establishment and ostentatious. Like, I know the Rolling Stones have a billiard table, so I do like the idea of having a billiard table backstage, just in case you feel like playing, pool or snooker before going out.
I'd want a Scalextric set so I could just have little Scalextric race car races before going out.
It's like all set up, so someone has to make it every
On
time.
a billiard table.
That's right. And then another billiard table in case you want to play billiards. So
Yeah. Hey, look, speaking of riders and, gourmet food to have in the green room, how's Operation KFC going?
very well, very well. I drive past with a feeling of self-righteousness and aloofness. Like, I still nod at the colonel and give a little salute, but it's a little knowing you're not getting me this time. And sometimes I brag to the car about how we're driving past and we're not eating KFC, even though, we're nowhere near a mealtime or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's going very well. Yes. I'm very motivated.
You know how, Jesus did that 40 days in the wilderness?
Yes.
And the devil, tried to tempt him. And I remember in illustrated Bible books, there would always be a picture of, Jesus, standing on a cliff or in the desert or something. And there would be some figure next to him that represented the devil trying to tempt him.
Yes.
I like to think of you in the wilderness just standing with the colonel, and the colonel's just offering you different meal deals and buckets and feeds and that, and you're just no matter what he comes up with, you're just standing firm. I will not be swayed.
Oh, dear. And he starts off with some of the rogue ones, this one's from Henley Beach Road. And I'm like, nah. And then he's like, all right, here's one from Mitcham. So, oh, hello. It's more like he's found my weak spot.
What if I throw in a zinger burger?
No, go on, just have the chips. Because this is the thing.
Just the chips?
Just the chips. Start with the chips.
Do KFC chips count in your year-long fast?
Yes, they do. Yes. No KFC. I will not purchase an item from KFC. Yeah.
Right.
The chicken doesn't count, obviously. I'm allowed to have the chicken. Just nothing else.
Would you be allowed to use one of their moist towelettes?
Look, I think on principle I might abstain from them as well. Because that's not too hard, because they're fundamentally unnecessary for anything in life except if you're eating KFC. You know what I mean? They're the heavy duty stuff that you only need for the chicken. What I mean is, there are industrial cleaners that are using products that are less powerful than those towelettes. So they should be redundant for my year.
I know. I mean, when they have those huge oil spills in America, they just come in with 20 of those towelettes and the whole problem solved.
The trouble is the oil spill was caused by someone spilling KFC in the ocean anyway.
Evan, who is one of our civilians, has decided not to be particularly helpful, and he sent us in a message with a link to an article that I found very interesting, which relates to the mythical KFC gold card, which you've been lobbying for many years now.
Yes.
He actually sent a link to this article that sheds a lot of light on the matter, and it's not the gold card that KFC make available. It's actually a KFC black card. That is the thing that you're after. And they do give these cards out to various people. One person who has one is a reality TV star in the UK called Joey Essex. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's quite famous here. And he has one of these black cards, and he talked about it in an interview recently. The card itself is made of metal. It's black coloured.
Wow.
It's made of metal, and it entitles the holder to £200 worth of free food every day. So I don't know, what's that, about
Whoa.
300 Aussie bucks or so?
350 or so,
You got
yeah,
300
maybe.
bucks a day. So,
Yeah.
I mean, even you'd struggle to reach that.
Yeah.
He told This Morning, the TV show, that he has one. He says the card comes in particularly handy on dates. I don't know how much food his dates eat, but anyway, he said, this is a quote from him in 2017. I've got a black card. It's metal and everything. You get £200 a day on it. So it's just a wallop and give them this card and getting bare KFC everywhere.
That's incredible.
Apparently there was also a video game competition a while ago where the winner, the winning gamer, was also given one of these KFC black cards. It was the first prize. So it's not a gold card, it's a black card.
Right. So that's why they haven't responded. We've got the wrong name, the wrong colour. A black card.
If KFC gave you a black card tomorrow, what would you do?
Wow, talk about bad timing. In my 46 years or so.
Yeah.
And then the 1 year I decide to give up KFC, I get a black card. Maybe it's valid only for this year, KFC, all right. It's safe. Now we know we won't
I think
get
you'd
eaten
maybe
out.
have to postpone your fast for a year.
My goodness me. It'd be incredible just to have and to frame and put on the wall. Like you'd want to, like here it is.
Break in case of emergency.
That's right. But it's just got broken glass, like it's already broken. Like it's
Yeah.
it's like that lasted till lunch. That is very cool and nightclubby and sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's cooler than gold.
I have been having a lot of people sending me, like tweeting and sending images trying to tempt me. And I've just risen above that immature behaviour. Yes, I'm just able to float right across it.
I don't think people realise the fortitude that Tim has, what they're dealing with. I don't think they realise how much harder we're going to have to try to make him break this fast. Come on, people, get creative.
Just because I'm salivating doesn't mean I'll break.
Just start sending unsolicited KFC meals to Malvern Uniting.
That's right. That's right. Why didn't I try this last year? It's a wonderful reverse psychology just to get a heap of KFC.
Send me the black card, KFC. You know I won't use it.
Yeah, that's right. It's safe with me. Yeah.
We've had another sofa shop cover come in. We still love receiving them if you are so inclined.
Don't you do a thing until you see the sofa shop.
Here's a message before I play it. Hello, Tim and Brady. Many years ago, I took sitar lessons in India and ended up getting carried away and bought a sitar. After returning to the UK, I never quite got around to dedicating my life to mastering the instrument, so it ended up gathering dust before I finally decided to donate it to charity today. However, before saying farewell, I thought I'd give it one last hurrah by attempting a rendition of the sofa shop on it, which is unsurprisingly wonky on my part and in no way does justice to the beautiful instrument, but I hope you enjoy it anyway. And that message came from Michael. So here is the sofa shop played on his sitar, which is about to be donated to charity, from Michael.
I think the sitars are a little bit like the bagpipes, very divisive. People either love it or hate it. And I love the bagpipes. I'm not so crash hot on the sitar, I have to say.
No.
No.
I thought you might like it. I thought you might have some interesting story about the time Nick Cave spent 4 years living on a mountaintop and playing sitar or something like that.
No, perish the
Or is
thought.
it just the Beatles that got seduced by that?
Yeah, George Harrison brought that in. I skip the sitar influenced songs. I like George Harrison songs, but not the sitar ones. That don't do it for me. I have to say, it's also, that's the first time I've heard the sitar played realistically. Like, I don't want to be too harsh. Like, but generally when you hear the sitar, because it's not like an acoustic guitar sitting around playing, trying things out. You generally hear someone play it professionally, like on a Beatles song or something. But it is nice to hear someone, having a go and go, oh, okay, this does actually sound like it's
Yeah.
being mastered slowly.
I also respect Michael for realising he couldn't play the sitar and therefore not playing it and then donating it to charity, unlike Tim, who can't play the guitar but still insists on playing his and like making people listen to him play it.
He keeps bashing away at it. That's right.
I do like the idea of this sitar like haunting him, reminding him of this phase where he got all swept away by the emotion of his holiday to India and thought he was going to be, years later he was like, like that rowing machine I had that I thought was going to transform my life and ended up just being used as a clothes drying rack.
And that other time you got swept up with that clothes drying rack and that just sat there, he ended up using it for rowing.
Anyway, Sitar Sofa Shop cover. Thank you very much, Michael.
That's not a bad idea, I have to say. That idea of things I got swept up in the spur of the moment. And it's particularly if you've gone and bought a heap of stuff, like a particular sport or, like you're saying with your exercise machine.
Numerous gym memberships.
Yeah.
Speaking of Sofa Shop, by the way, here's an interesting message we got from a colonel, no less. Colonel Derek Nierenberg. That's an unmade colonel, by the way, not an actual colonel.
I understand.
Hi, Brady. I know this is a bit late to be talking about a Christmas gift, but I thought this one deserved recognition. I wanted to show you and Tim what my close friend Amanda got Jake the oboist, who's also a colonel, and me. Attached is a picture of a keychain that says Proof of Colonelship 2021. There'll be a picture in the show notes and on screen right now, along with a Spotify code that links to episode 75, where you featured Jake's performance of my arrangement. She got one for each of us. Hope your 2022 is going well, from Derek. Now, for people who don't remember who Derek is, Derek arranged a performance of The Sofa Shop to be performed on the Century Tower Carol on Bells at the University of Florida, and his friend Jake the oboist played it. And we were so impressed, and we got a bit swept away in the heat of the moment. We gave out colonelships. That was episode 75. So Amanda has given him a little souvenir with a link to the episode, and I thought that was a really clever gift and worthy of a recognition.
That certainly is, yeah, and it looks cool too. I like it.
Yeah, they were given certificates of colonelship, by the way. We didn't just let it go by, but...
You're not going to walk around with that all day long, are you? You're going to keep that in a safe. So this is something that you can show other people.
You weren't going to keep that in a safe, you're right. Do you know what? I went back and listened to episode 75 because I wanted to be reminded of that moment. I wanted to hear it again before reading this out. Episode 75 is an absolute cracker, Tim.
Really?
I put it on just to listen to the start, and I just kept listening. We were on great form.
Oh.
Fantastic. I was sitting there laughing, thinking these guys are brilliant.
Are you sure it was our show?
It was amazing. Even the hover ad was great.
Yeah, that's good.
I tell you what.
It's nice to know we had a purple patch in the 70s there.
Yeah. Our listeners are spoiled. In fact, we should just stop this episode now and just start playing episode 75. Just rerun it.
That's good.
Stop now, people, and go back and listen to episode 75. That's where it's at.
That's where it's at. This will be interesting to see in the stats, the bump, if people do that. But go and check it out.
That was the one where we talked about our strategic vision 2030.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, there's a lot of good material there, isn't there? That's for sure.
Those were the days. Those were the days.
Those were the days.
I haven't mentioned my cold yet. Do I still sound really nasal?
I'd forgotten, because I think you sound great. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a thing podcasters do. They always apologise for how their voice sounds because they think they sound really different, and no one ever notices it until they even bring it up. So
no,
I shouldn't have brought it up.
It's like I'm talking to Demi Moore. It's got a lovely gravelly sort of thing, but no, it's pretty good.
Let's just get on with the show, shall we?
That's right.
Here's an idea for a podcast. Last episode, right? There was just a throwaway line from our guest, Destin Sandlin, where he talked about his trip to New Zealand, and he mentioned it was his first time on a plane. And I believe he said it was also his grandfather's first time on a commercial flight. And it made me think, is there a podcast idea in My First Flight where people talk about their first ever time on a plane? Because it seems to be something burned into a lot of people's memories, the first time they ever flew on a plane. And quite often it seems to have a story associated with it, I'm learning. Do you remember your first time on a plane?
Well, my very first time, you'll love this, was when I was about 3.5 and we went to Holland.
Yeah, we went to Holland, yeah. All right, go on then.
I was backpacking around most of Europe at that stage. They were pretty crazy years, though. 3.5 through 4.
How well do you remember the flight if you were so young?
I do remember it. One of the things, and I think I may have mentioned this previously, is the cool moment I was taken up to the cockpit. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But we got a couple of photos of me just a sound asleep, on a leaning up against mum, sound asleep. And when I look at that, I go, oh, yes, that looks familiar and feels familiar. But the distance and time and all, I must have slept most of it. I don't remember sitting there going, oh, this is a long flight like I do now, whining and longing to get there. It seemed to be over very quickly. One other thing was I remember looking out the window, and because mum and dad had built up that, while we're in Holland, there's going to be snow. So when I was looking out, I looked down at the clouds and I said, oh, there we go. That's the snow. And they had to say, no, that's just the clouds. You'd fall through them.
Do you remember taking your girls on a plane for the first time?
Ooh, I took each of them when they turned 10 on a special trip, to see a show and all that in interstate. But I think we may have gone on holiday before then, maybe to Tasmania or somewhere. It doesn't stick out in my mind, no. Probably does in theirs. Right. Yeah, I'll ask them. Yeah.
No, we'll get them on the show sometime. Hopefully they can tell a better story than you just told.
No, that's right. How's this? I remember the second time I got on a plane, I remember the Rolling Stone magazine I was reading. How's that? That's not bad, is it?
Well, that level of detail is interesting. I've asked a few people this morning about their first flight, and the first person I asked was a friend of mine, who's also a friend of yours, Mark, who's a professional pilot for Qantas.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought he would be an interesting person to ask. So I sent him a text and said, do you remember your first flight on a plane, just as a passenger? He wrote, yes, a Fokker friendship from Adelaide to Kingscote. Kingscote is a town on Kangaroo Island, which is actually a very short flight. We took off on runway 05. 3 days later, my brother and I spilt a flavoured milk on the floor of a hire car, which was a Toyota Corolla, and my dad lost his SHIT. The memories. That kind of level of detail is very typical of Mark. He's a details man. And I replied and said, can you remember what flavour the milk was? He wrote, that I can't remember. I can remember flying over Brompton, which is a suburb of Adelaide. There were some chimney stacks that were only recently pulled down, so I must have been on the left side of the plane. The plane was an F-27.
As a pilot, he knows. I wonder if he had the passion for planes back then, whether he would have known then.
I asked him if he remembered the year because I said then we could track down the hire car records and find out what flavour milk they spilt. But anyway, we went off on a bit of a tangent then. But these little details that people remember associated with their first flight, spilling flavoured milk, the Rolling Stone magazine, stuff like that, it's quite interesting. I actually put a little call out to our Patreon supporters on our Patreon page, and I asked any of them. I just put out a bit of a call for first flight memories just half an hour ago. So, and here's a few replies. I thought they were interesting to hear. Wouter, who's a Patreon supporter, who's Dutch. My first plane flight was around 2005-ish when I went to a conference in the UK. The flight was in an Airbus A319 operated by EasyJet. Wouter's an engineer, by the way, so as you'll soon figure out.
Yeah.
I distinctively remember the view as we took off and landed, seeing the coast of the Netherlands and also nearly flying over my then hometown of Alkmaar. And when arriving at Gatwick, the patchwork of fields and villages in the UK. The plane has a specific funny sound when one engine is shut down during taxiing, which sounds like someone sawing off the landing gear. That's the hydraulic pump pressurizing the system that normally gets driven by the engine. It's called the barking dog, which was explained to me at length by one of my teammates. Anytime I'm on an A319, A320 or A321, I'm always listening out for that sound. All in all, a fun flight and a great trip.
Well, there you go. I think there are two types of people in the world, by the way. Those who know the names of planes, the models of planes, and those that don't. Like some people I know, they come from a trick. Oh, did you get the A20 or the A20? Oh, no, we've got the SBS Skybus. Oh, right, yeah, I know. They're I have no clue which one plane. I know their Cessnas are small, but then there are the other ones we go when we go interstate, and the other ones we go on when we go overseas, and I don't know any of them.
SBS Sky Bus. I like that. Here's one from Jason, another Patreon supporter. By the way, go to patreon.com/unmadefm. You might get asked weird questions by me at the last minute before a podcast when I'm desperately scrambling for ideas. Jason says, I was 14 and alone with my sister, flying from Brussels, Belgium to Heathrow, England. We were dropped off by my grandparents and picked up in England by our mother, who had an English partner at the time, and she was already over there. We were very nervous because everything was new, flying alone with my little sister who was 12. On the plane, we had zero experience, and when they handed out hot towels, I declined as I didn't know what it was. My sister, who was more adventurous than me, accepted it, and after I saw what it was, I was sad because I would have enjoyed one too. All in all, everything was okay, but we'll always remember that trip. That is so typical. Like, that's years ago, and it's such an innocuous thing that the sister took the hot towel and he's jealous that he now hasn't got a hot towel. And it still sticks with Jason to this day.
And even now, it's because he knows what a hot towel feels like now, the regret would be even stronger. Like, oh, that would have been so refreshing.
It's always a weird thing, isn't it, when kids get put on planes on their own? I realise why it has to happen. It had to happen with Jason and his sister, but something doesn't quite seem right about putting kids on the plane on their own.
No, there's a whole aura around planes and flying and the trip. And even though I feel totally casual and relaxed about it and it's very matter of fact, I think I do feel there's probably a slight heightened anxiety about it or something like that. I know it does funny things to you. Like, I know that people are apparently much more likely to cry during movies when they're on a plane and things like that, true. You know?
I watched Marley and Me on a flight and I'm still, like, traumatised by how much I cried.
Who's that guy down the front just howling?
It was terrible. I was once sitting next to my wife and she was watching Paddington 2 and I couldn't hear it because she had headphones in. I was just watching over her shoulder the last 20 minutes of Paddington 2. So I didn't really know what was going on, but I could kind of follow it visually. Yeah. And I cried multiple times and I couldn't even hear it. So, like when he nearly drowns in the carriage and then his mum comes at the end. Oh, spoilers. Sorry.
It's a good movie, but because you told me something along those lines before I saw it, I was waiting for a massive emotional impact that didn't quite come at the same level. But I needed to have watched it on a plane. Maybe I'll give it another run on a plane sometime.
Paddington 2, fantastic. But all of it's good. Like, even like the corny bits are good. Hugh Grant's great in it.
I did like it. I did like it a lot, yeah.
Here's a message from George, another stakeholder. Flying from the Gold Coast to Sydney on my first ever holiday with my dad. I would have been 8 or 9. We were seated on the left of the plane, and we were lucky enough to be routed the somewhat less common approach over Sydney Harbour. Having woken up at 6 a.m. that morning in my little country town, my first sight of a real city, the bridge, the opera house, completely blew me away.
There you go.
First time you see Sydney is amazing.
That's true. Yes. Something that's so familiar, for Australians, that is, you know, the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and then to see it there for real. And the bridge is so beautiful, isn't it? It's so much bigger than you think. It's
so
gorgeous.
Big.
Yeah.
Nothing prepares you for how big it is. It's a big thing, the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
It is.
It's a big hunk of metal. Here's Monty. My first flight was London to Corfu. We got caught in a storm over the Alps. The plane was hit by lightning, and I just remember seeing lightning going up the side of the plane. The lights all went out, and it felt like we were dropping. When we finally landed in Corfu, after being diverted to Athens for a few hours, all the electricity was off on the island. Not the best flight, but it has made every plane journey since a breeze.
Yes, I can imagine. Have you ever been in serious turbulence on a plane?
I've told this story before, but my first ever flight when I was a little boy, we were trying to land in Tasmania. I don't remember this. And the plane was circling and couldn't land. And there was a real panic on the plane. And at a real inopportune moment, I called out, Mummy, are we going to die? And it sent everyone else in the plane onto this huge panic. And people were like, shut that kid up, shut that kid up.
Oh, dear.
And I'm sure I've told you this, but that's such a famous story in my family. And years later, I met someone from Tasmania, from that town. And for some reason, I told that story just to break the ice. I was once on this plane, Mummy. And the girl said, you're not going to believe this. My grandmother was on that flight, And she always tells the story of this little boy on the plane saying, "Mummy, mummy, are we going to die?" and sending everyone in the plane into an even bigger panic.
Oh, what a classic.
And that was a famous story in her family.
Oh,
and
that's
I was the little boy. She then like phoned her grandmother and said, "Guess who I'm with, Grandma? I'm with the boy that said, 'Mummy, mummy, are we going to die?'"
That's great. Your traumatic influence has rippled through like multiple generations of that family.
Here's one from El Mani. My first flight was in 2000. I was 13, travelling from the US with my family. We started in Hanover, Germany, and went to Brussels for a stopover. That said first flight was especially exciting for me. A few months before, I had gotten a model airplane kit of an Avro RJ small plane, and my first flight was in exactly the same type of plane. It was very exciting. So there's another person who knows their models of planes for you.
That's pretty cool. From Hanover to Brussels. That's a very cool first
And
flight.
you'd made that model plane just weeks before. I love it.
I remember getting a Qantas model when I got off. Obviously, they did this with some kids. And I had, like a model aircraft plane. I didn't have to make it. Like, it was all made up. Oh, I guess so. It was a toy, really, rather than a...
Yeah, like die-cast metal. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ones, yeah.
And we had that up on the shelf in our lounge room. So not just even my bedroom. It was so special. It was in like our adult, the main lounge room on the shelf.
With the spoons, with your dad's spoons.
Near this, not too far from the spoons. That's right. Yes.
All right. So do you reckon I'm on a winner here with my podcast idea?
I do think it's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many you're going to do, but you might want to get it down to some remarkable stories. But at the very least, it is an interesting question to throw in talking and interviewing someone. Yeah. Something jumps out for sure.
It's a good icebreaker.
Interesting, those whose first flights are international and others are just sort of, local and around the place. Like 1 hour compared to 16 hours. Or living in Australia, people don't understand, do they, in the Northern Hemisphere, just how far we fly. Like 24 hours to London. It's just unbelievable.
I did that first flight to Tasmania when I was a little boy, but then I didn't fly for years and years afterwards. And my first flight that I can properly remember was... I must have been about 20 or so, and we went on a football trip to Melbourne to go and watch football in Melbourne. And I just went with another mate who I worked with. And my abiding memory was, wow, I didn't realise planes went this fast on the runway. I didn't realise there was so much thrust and power. I was really surprised. And now I don't find that anymore. And I think it's partly because smaller planes go quicker when they take off, it seems, or it feels like it. Or maybe I've just gotten used to it. But now, like 9 times out of 10, I fall asleep as soon as I sit on the plane, and I wake up and we're already in the air. So,
Or you open I'm the same. You open a book or a magazine or something like that and start reading, waiting for them to shut the doors, and then you look around and suddenly someone's walking past with a trolley and we're on our way, and you're engrossed. Yeah. I do remember that similar with me, the Rolling Stone trip, as we might refer to it. I was about that age as well. I think I was 20 or 21 or something. And I remember being disappointed with how quick the trip was. Like, we were coming in for a landing. I was like, no, this is cool. I've been enjoying this. We're there already. It was the last time in history that I was ever disappointed at a short flight, that's for sure.
I remember when I flew to Sydney for the Sydney Olympics, actually. And I got on the plane in Adelaide and I sat down, and by an amazing coincidence, although it's not that amazing in Adelaide, I was sat next to an old school friend of ours. And I was like, oh, this is a nice surprise. I'm going to get to sit next to someone I know for the flight. This will be fun. We'll get to chat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She was, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? Yeah, cool. And then the plane took off, and 30 seconds into the flight, she started throwing up violently into a sick bag. And she did for the entire flight, what's that, 2.5, 3 hours to Sydney? Non-stop. I reckon she must have gone through 10 bags.
No.
She's tiny. I don't know where it all came
goodness
from.
Me.
But she didn't stop throwing up the entire flight.
Oh, dear.
It was a nightmare.
That can't be just the motion sickness or flight. She must have had a bug or something. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but I couldn't move because it was a packed flight. So I went from thinking, this is going to be a pleasant flight, sitting next to someone who I like and I can chat to it was like, get me out of here.
Oh, wow. Well, she would have been so, embarrassed and apologetic, I'm sure. But, gosh.
I don't know. I think she was otherwise occupied.
Right.
I'm amazed she survived. She must, anyway. On that note, let's move on to a sponsorship message from Hover.
I'm sure they're thrilled with that segue. Yes.
Hover is the go-to domain registrar. If you need to register a domain name like myfirstflight.com or whatever else you need for your business or your personal life or your pets or anything else, you must go to Hover. Go to hover.com/unmade. Brilliant website, brilliant service, brilliant prices. I feel like we've almost run out of great things to say about Hover. But if you do go to hover.com/unmade, you're going to get 10% off your first purchase. Don't forget that.
Brady, I could never run out of things to say about Hover.
Well, the floor is yours.
Hang on, just give me a minute. No, not only, but because I've bought a bunch of domains through Hover for our church, a few variations on different ones that we're going to use, and it was just such a thrill to do it. It was so easy. Now I'm in the process of bringing the main one, which is still captive to someone else, across to Hover as well.
It's really easy. They make that quite easy because that can be a complicated process.
Right.
Changing a domain you already have between. But they have this like really good service to make it really simple. So I hope you find that very easy.
All right.
It's a smart thing to do to have them all in one place. That place being Hover.
Well, I'm a smart guy, so I do smart things, and this is one of the smart things, probably the only smart thing I'll be doing this week.
Can I tell you another thing I really like about Hover, which is sort of like a bit of an unsung thing they do, which I really like, and that is how easy they make renewing or not renewing a domain. Because a lot of domains you register and you want to keep them for a long time or forever.
Yeah.
Like unmade.fm, obviously I'm going to want to keep that for a long time, so I have that constantly renewing. Other ones you might get on spec, and then a year or two later you think, oh, actually, no, I'm probably not going to go ahead with that project. I don't need that domain anymore. I don't want to renew it. They make the checkbox and the system for renewing or not renewing when your registration runs out really transparent, really easy. They'll send you a reminder at the end saying, just so you know, this one's not renewing, you're about to lose it. But they're not like scammy and sort of trap you into paying for another registration if you don't want it anymore. They're really good about that process. They make it really simple. They're really fair dealers, Hover. I think they you really feel like they're never going to rip you off. They're just trying to give you a good service. Hover.com/unmade. 10% off with /unmade.
Get them all on that first time. That's what you want to do. Get a bunch of domains and buy them at that first time.
Fill your boots.
Do it straight away.
Fill your boots. Get every single one in the world, and then you'll have all the websites.
Just sit down with a dictionary and start working your way through.
Then you've got the world over a barrel. It is time for
Spoon of the Week.
Alrighty.
Tim, what spoon from the Hine family archive are you going to dazzle us with this week?
Well, Brady, I've got something very special for you this week. In fact, I haven't even sent this one to you. So let me send you a photo.
There's in a picture of it.
Indeed. I'm not sending the actual thing
You
to
can hold it
no
up
way.
on this camera. I'll see it on the camera. Okay. It's not in focus, so I can't read the text, but it looks like some kind of building, like a church.
No. See if you can decide what it is purely from the shape of the picture. I think it blurs if I get too close.
Well, as I said, it looked like a sort of a church or a building of some sort, but you're saying it's not a church?
No, it's a natural feature. It's not a human hand built.
Oh, okay. So they're like rocks. They're like pillars of some sort. I'm looking at a very out of focus picture at the moment of it.
How many rocks are there?
I can see 3.
Yes. So what place do you think would have a souvenir spoon around Australia with 3 rocks? The Three Sisters.
Yeah, I was about to say the something sisters. Yeah, I've never been to them though.
I've never been to them either, but Mum has, and here's the proof in my hand.
Where are the Three Sisters?
They're in New South Wales. All
right.
And I remember having a picture book as a kid that was just one of my little suite of books. I don't know where I got it from, but it was a sort of an adventure story about a kookaburra and little children on some adventure, and it was around the park where the Three Sisters were. So I remember, and you know when you're a kid and you read these picture books like 50 times, so it's sort of burnt into my mind. So I kind of feel like I've been there, but I actually haven't been there. But I'm sort of know this story and and Mum talked about how wonderful it is.
Tim's like, yeah, I've been to the Three Sisters. There was a talking kookaburra.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, well, that's right. It's in New South Wales in a national park there, Well, this is like childhood memory may have got me all wrong. Three sisters. Let's look it up.
I always love a good rock formation.
This is where we hear that it's a myth. Like it's, it's a mysterious land. It's like Middle Earth or something.
No, it's not a real place. It's like Hogwarts.
That's right. Oh yeah, no, here we go. It's real. The Three Sisters are an unusual rock formation in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales.
Okay.
So this is sort of around where Skippy, the bush kangaroo's from, and Man from Snowy River, that kind of high country sort of area. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mum talked about how beautiful it was, and she must have bought this book. Rather than actually taking me there, she bought this book and no doubt has bought this spoon.
It's not a book, it's a spoon. It's not Book of the Week.
No. Bought me the book, which got me,
Oh, the book with the kookaburra.
That's right. That I watched again and again. And I don't feel like I need to go there because the book made such an impression and now I have the spoon. What possible reason would I have to actually go and see the Three Sisters? Why do all that walking when I can...
when you can just enjoy the view in spoon form.
The spoon is quite pretty. It's a pretty good job. It's pretty much got an oval stem. Is that right? No, handle at the top.
Handle.
And there's a sky and there's clouds in the sky. It's sort of painted in the background, but then there's little silver rock formations are there. And
looks a quite small and dainty spoon from here.
It is quite dainty. Yes, it is. Yes. Lovely stem, fairly conventional scoopy bit. There's a little bit of green up the top. But do you know what? It says something, and I can't remember. Oh, it says Blue Mountains, New South Wales. There we go. It does say that. Very worn back lettering.
The Blue Mountains, which is sort of outside Sydney.
Yes. There we go. So that's Spoon of the Week.
Very nice.
Oh, yes.
Of course, we have our very own Unmade podcast souvenir spoon that has been struck and minted here in the UK. We like to give them away to stakeholders, to Patreon supporters. And this week we are sending one randomly chosen to Leonard from Switzerland.
There we go. Leonard from Switzerland.
We also like to keep the good stuff flowing to those Patreon supporters, so we're sending a Sofa Shop mixtape, which is highly collectible, to Greg B from British Columbia in Canada. Congratulations, Greg B.
Congratulations.
And Spoon of the Week collector cards, which is, is the new big thing. It's the new thing that all the kids are talking about, like Minecraft and Fortnite and Roblox and all that. Spoon of the Week collector cards. We're going to give a handful of those too. Preben from Norway, Andrew M from Kentucky, Robert L from San Francisco, Craig W from Illinois, and Yorn B from Norway. Again, Yorn B. Yorn won some cards or something not long ago. He's on a roll.
I love the cards are going they're right across the world in different directions, heading out from your place. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like food parcels they are, really, just for the soul.
I wonder if anyone's got the whole set yet, if anyone's managed to cobble together an entire set of Spoon of the Week collector cards, because that's the dream. I had
dinner last night with the man who does our photography, who does the photos and so forth of the spoons, the formal photography. You might say that he's got what do they call it when you have the royal, it's by royal assent or something like
warrant. A warrant.
Royal warrant, yeah. So he has the unmade warrant. He's our go-to person for photography for the spoons. And I was having dinner with him last night. And I was saying we need to take some photos. So we've got a whole bunch of spoons ready to go. He's like, bring them over. And he also had his own collection of spoons from a family, members in other places. He was quite proud to bring them out. And
does he use those ones to practice taking spoon photos before he gets our official spoons?
Yeah, I made him work on his own for several months before I was willing to bring him the official unmade spoons.
Can I share another podcast idea, Tim, that I've had?
Sure. Am I going to get a go after you?
No, I make no guarantees. What do you? This could be a podcast or a new segment on our podcast. What do you think about this? Moon of the Week.
we only got one moon.
No, we talk about all the other moons. Jupiter has 79 moons. Saturn has as many as 83 moons.
What?
Mars has 2 moons. Uranus has 27 moons. Neptune has 14 moons. And if you want to get into the whole Pluto debate, Pluto kind of has a moon, one moon. Don't send me an email to talk about Pluto and its moon. I know the deal.
Even I'm aware of that controversy. I thought like Jupiter had 7 or 8 moons. That's all. That's how many it had when I was in primary school. Has it got more?
79.
That's too many moons. Where does he put all
Jupiter's
those?
biggest moon's bigger than Mercury.
Gosh.
And these are the moon of the week. You could have some of them are really interesting, right? Like there are really obvious ones like is it Europa? I think that's like all kind of icy and watery. Io is really volcanic. Titan at Saturn famously has quite a thick atmosphere. The moons of Uranus are named after all sorts of interesting things, including Shakespearean characters. There's Puck, there's Ophelia, Bianca, Juliet. So you could talk about how they're all named. We could have a different moon every week, and I could regale you with interesting details.
Wow.
Moon of the week.
There's a moon called Bianca. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And that's a lot of that's a lot more moons out there than I thought. You're not making these up, are you? Sort of naming them after...
No, it's the real deal. Should we start Moon of the Week?
Well, can I say, they're going to be a lot harder for my friend to photograph, that's for sure. I'm not going to be able to bring them down to the studio.
All right.
Moon of the Week.
I reckon that'd be great.
Well, are you going to do our moon? Because, our moon's like it's ours.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hold back on that one. That'd be a bit of a showstopper, that one. I don't want you to feel like I'm muscling in on Spoon of the Week, though.
Well, I think that's hardly a threat. I mean, sounds like... Sounds like moon's a dime a dozen out there at the moment. They're not like the special spoon collection.
We could have a public vote and people can decide if they want Spoon of the Week or Moon of the Week.
We can give it a bit of a test run and see if the fans take to it.
Maybe next episode I'll throw in a cheeky moon and see what people think.
All right. Does that mean I have to sing a really cool intro to throw to it? I might go really low.
Give us a couple of samples now so I can send them to my music guy.
Moon of the week. I want to sing Moon River wider than a mile. The moon of the week. Yes.
My huckleberry friend.
I love that song so much.
All right. Watch this space for Moon of the Week.
Moon of the week.
Tim, I am going to let you have a podcast idea, but first, we have to talk about Storyblocks. It's been a little while since we had a bit of a Storyblocks game, so I've come up with a Storyblocks game for you today.
Oh, these are so stressful. Yes.
Before we get to that, let me just remind people what Storyblocks is. We're talking storyblocks.com/unmade. This is a demand-driven library of entirely royalty-free 4K and HD footage, After Effects and Premiere Pro templates, music, images, sound effects, all the stuff you could want for creating stuff. Podcasts, videos, newsletters, whatever you create, websites. They offer subscriptions that will fit any budget, including their unlimited all access, which is a subscription I am proud to use, which gives you unlimited downloads. Check them out, storyblocks.com/unmade. I use them all the time. I think with Storyblocks, like, the main event is the videos, right? That's the thing most people use Storyblocks for. And I use the Storyblocks videos all the time. They're great. But all the other stuff is so handy. And I particularly enjoy the sound effects. I need the sound effects a lot for videos and for podcasts and stuff. So, Tim, I searched for 3 sound effects on the Storyblocks library.
Right.
And I'm going to send them to you. You will listen to the sound effect.
Yes.
And I want you to guess the one-word search term I used for which this was the result. So what one-word search term did I use in the Storyblocks library that resulted in these sound effects?
Okay. So I'm not describing what I hear, but I'm going to describe what you would have put in to get it.
Everyone's going to hear it.
Yep.
Okay, there's number 1, Tim. What one-word search term do you think I used that provided that sound effect in Storyblocks?
Boing.
You think I used the word boing?
That to me sounds like boing. I reckon you wrote in boing. Yes.
That's a really good guess, and it is a word I have searched on before, boing. But in this particular case, I used the word spring.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But I was
Yes.
but I was hoping for a boing sound, and I almost used boing.
Yeah.
So that was a very good guess. Number 2.
I'm tempted to say a cow in the middle of a domestic argument, but no. I'll go with... Is it one word I can say, or...
One word.
Ooh, trumpeting? Oh, no, that wouldn't have done it. I guess elephant.
Yes, elephant. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Don't overthink
But I'm trying
it.
to just... Okay.
This is a Storyblocks ad, man. It's not Mastermind. All right. Okay. And
But what was the elephant saying? That's what I'm trying to discern.
third and final sound effect from the Storyblocks library.
Okay, so this is an interesting one because this could be alarm or siren. I'm going to go with siren.
The correct answer is ambulance.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, if any of those 3 sound effects appeal to you,
God. You're so close.
if any of those sound effects appeal to you, or countless others, or videos, or pictures, or all the good stuff they have on Storyblocks, go to storyblocks.com/unmade. Make sure you use the /unmade so they know you came from here. Our thanks to Storyblocks for supporting this episode and for providing us with an endless supply of great material we can use to embarrass Tim on the podcast.
I'm unashamed. I stand by siren is a good answer.
They were all good answers, just only one of them was correct. All right, finally, we get to hear an idea from Tim.
Yes, finally. People have held in a long time waiting for this, to be honest. I mean, really. It's, this is what they come for, and they've been made to sit through moons and all sorts of stuff. Anyway. Without further ado, my podcast idea is called 3 Moments, 3 People. Now, this idea is really about the fact that I think there are potentially in everyone's life 3 moments which dramatically swing the direction of their life. Like if something hadn't happened, they would have gone in a totally different direction or kept going in the same direction. It wouldn't have swung. I also think there are sort of 3 maybe key people, or it's interesting to name 3 people who, if they hadn't met that person, their life would have been dramatically different. So very quickly, the people one in some ways is less interesting. But like, for instance, our wives, if we hadn't met them, obviously it would be dramatically different.
Yes.
I think, though, it's probably more interesting to push harder down to a less high-profile person who we just happened to come across who suggested something, and because of that, something else happened. And I'll give you an illustration. So for mine, there's sort of a person at the center of a particular moment. And I think this is fascinating because the more I've thought about it during the week, the more I'm amazed at how much has flown unexpectedly from this one particular moment. Years and years ago, in the late 90s, I was living in Adelaide, and I went over to Melbourne to help with my cousin's wedding. And on spare time, I wanted a book for a Christian minister, a guy called John Smith, a well-known sort of minister, had written some books. This is sort of pre, the internet, so I couldn't find it that way. And I looked on the back of one of the other books to find, where the office was, some random office reception. And I drove out there, and it was sort of a lot further out of the city than I thought. Turned up there, and it's just like a very regular sort of reception office. And I went in and said, is this the place? And they said, oh, yes. And I said, oh, I'm just someone, like looking for this book. And they said, oh, yes, we've got a few out the back. And so the receptionist went off out the back. And this is like a normal office. A person randomly walked past and just said, hello, young fella. And I said, oh, hello. And then he just turned around and he said, you want a job? And I sort of laughed awkwardly and, like he's going to ask me to take out the trash or something like that. But then suddenly he'd thrust a piece of paper in my hand, and it had a list of, we're looking for some people for a job. Like, I'm a total stranger. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the lady came back, and I was sort of awkward and nervous. When someone's sort of patronizing, hey, young fella, and you're younger, you're sort of a little bit awkward. But I took the book, And I took the piece of paper and awkwardly said goodbye and went away. The long and the short of it is I ended up looking at the paper, looking at one of the jobs, calling back and talking to someone, and then actually thinking, I think I'd like to do one of these jobs. It was like a Christian ministry job, doing some stuff in schools and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I flew back a few months later and sort of interviewed and visited and stuff like that. And I ended up a few months after that moving to Melbourne. And I
Amazing.
think about that because it's in Melbourne that I, not just started my, Christian ministry vocation, but it's also, of course, I met my wife in Melbourne. And so I can trace back, and I look at my, my daughters and my wife and the trajectory, and none of it would exist if this guy hadn't walked past and said, "Hi, young fella," and thrust a piece of paper into a stranger standing at the desk.
Who was that guy?
His name was Doc.
Yeah.
Because later, of course, I went over and I worked for him, and he was the IT guy. He just happened to be walking past the desk at that time.
Right. Yeah.
He was just the IT guy. He was also involved in the Christian ministry. Like, he was a biker, and they had sort of something called the God Squad, so an outreach to like bikers in the outlaw biker world. And lovely guy. Yeah, he's called Doc because he was sort of fixed other people's bikes. He was really good at that.
Yeah.
But it was not his job to go looking for anyone. He literally was in charge of IT. He just happened to be walking past the desk.
He'd probably just come out of a meeting where they were saying, how are we going to find employees? And he was just a bit fired up about the idea and thought, maybe this is a sign that there's some young guy here. I'll ask him.
Yeah. Yeah. But of course, once I was working there ages later, you realise how many people come to reception. There's people coming for all sorts of stuff. And it's not like I was walking up to each one of them going, "Hey, do you want to work for us?" It was just who was I?
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. The more I think about it, you almost shudder because you go, oh gosh, like, what if he hadn't done that? Then, I mean, I might have a different wife and different kids, or I might be doing something different, and I'm sure it'd be enriching and worth. But
you could be on a really successful podcast now.
I know. But it's these ones that I love and that I want. So it's sort of, it feels like the more I think about it, the more I think, oh, I'm so close to have not had them. Like it's
counts almost as an amazing moment as much as an amazing person. That one, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it is sort of a moment, but he's a sort of a low profile guy in the story. It's not like I married him or he became, my boss or something. He was, but he played such a critical role. So I was thinking about this during the week, and I was feeling so grateful to him that I messaged him.
Yeah.
I went searching for him on Facebook, and I haven't got a reply yet. Like, he's obviously not a big Facebook guy, but it's the best contact I could do for now. And I haven't seen him for 20 years, and I sent him a message just saying how grateful I was for something that he incidentally did because of all the things that I have now because of that.
You should have messaged him and said, "Hey, old fella, you want a job?" And offered him a job at your place.
That's right. Come on. Actually, that'd be helpful on the IT side. That's for sure. Yeah. Can you think of a moment like this? Because there's obvious ones, isn't there? Like, I applied for this job, and if I hadn't got the job, then I wouldn't have. But I'm thinking of more interesting ones where it's more accidental. You weren't looking for something. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them are work-related for me as well. I remember having a boss at the BBC. Actually, yeah. The story of how I got my job kind of ties in with a bit of this in a way. I've probably told this, I don't know if I've told this story a million times, but the story of me getting my job at the BBC is really good for this because it involves some people and some incidents. When I moved to the UK, I was trying to find a decent job. And to cut a long story short, one of the jobs I saw advertised was working for the BBC in Nottingham. So I got an interview, and the night before my interview in Nottingham, I got the train from London and spent the day before in Nottingham just to have a look around the city, see what I thought of it and find my feet. Yep. And then I was sleeping on a friend's sofa that night, and then I had my interview the next day. And by coincidence, the Queen was visiting Nottingham that day to open a big ice centre in Nottingham. So I thought, I've never seen the Queen. It's a big event. I'll go along and have a look. So I arrived outside the ice centre. There was a big crowd of people waiting. The Queen pulled up in her Rolls-Royce, came out, shook a bunch of people's hands, and then went into the ice centre. And I saw the Queen and I saw Prince Philip. They walked past me.
Yep.
And then as I was leaving, I walked past her Rolls-Royce, and there were all these broken eggs on the windscreen of the Rolls-Royce. Right. And it turns out a couple of mischievous youths had thrown eggs at the Queen's Rolls-Royce. They got arrested, or they got in trouble. And that was just a minor story the next day, couple of teens in trouble with the police for throwing eggs at the Queen's car. Big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went to my job interview, and part of the job interview was you had to write a news story to show that you could, pull together information and turn it into a coherent written story.
Yep.
And the information they gave me were a bunch of reports and press releases and wire stories about the Queen having her car egged, because that's just what they had lying around in the newsroom. They said, why don't we give the interviewees this information and see if they can write a story about it.
Yep.
So I sat down in my interview. I got given all this information. I turned it into a story, very basic. And then in my interview was with a few people, and they said, what did you think of the exercise, the written exercise, And I said, it was fine. It was, no problems at all. And then I said, funnily enough, I happened to be there. I saw it happen. I saw the eggs on the Rolls-Royce and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And straight away, it created this impression that I was this like Johnny on the spot news guy who was just always there when stuff was happening. Like, not only could I do the exercise, but I witnessed the event and I was part of it all, and I was able to talk about it and what it was like. And they were like, and it just made me sound so prepared and well researched, and it gave me a legitimate excuse to say, I came to Nottingham the day before and I was researching the town, and it just made me sound like this amazing applicant.
Yep.
And funnily enough, one of the women who was on that interview was a woman called Emma Agnew is her name. She's one of the bosses at BBC in the East Midlands, and she is the wife of the cricket commentator Jonathan Agnew, who's a famous BBC cricket commentator. And it turns out, about a year before this interview, she had been in Australia with Jonathan while he was commentating cricket matches in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Just like having a holiday with him while he was working on the Ashes cricket.
Yep.
And when they were in Adelaide, staying in the Adelaide Hotel for the Adelaide cricket match, was around a time when I was working at the Adelaide Advertiser, and a famous Australian airline collapsed. It went out of business. It was Ansett. They collapsed. And at the time, I was the transport writer for the Adelaide Advertiser.
Mummy, this plane's going to collapse with this airline.
So at the time, I was the transport writer for the Adelaide Advertiser. I was writing lots of stories about it, and my name was on the front page a lot because it was the biggest story in town.
Yeah.
So her and Jonathan had been reading the newspaper every day in their hotel in Adelaide and had seen my name on the top of all these stories. And had actually joked about it to each other. Brady Harron, what an unusual name. I think they said something like, only an Australian would call their kid, Brady Harron. They thought it was a strange name.
Yeah,
But they commented on it to each other a few times. And a year later, I'm sitting in this interview with her, and suddenly she goes, Brady Harron, I remember you. I remember your name on all these stories in the Adelaide Advertiser.
That's crazy.
And again, it just created this impression, I think, in their mind that I was this like guy who was everywhere, writing every story. If there's an egg thrown at a car, Brady's there. If an airline collapses in Australia, Brady's there. Like it just created this impression that I was this like ultimate news guy. So I ended up getting that job, and like that was a really important moment in my life, obviously. And it happened because of all this serendipity. But funnily enough, Emma Agnew again became a really important person in my life, because after about a year of working for the BBC website, the BBC decided to start training some of their staff to use video cameras and video editing and become video journalists. And they weren't just getting TV people to do it; they were giving the opportunity to other people in the newsroom who they thought had something about them and had a bit of talent.
Yep.
And it had never been an opportunity given to an online journalist at that stage. But Emma just sort of recognised something in me and said, you know what, I think Brady would really take to this. If we sent Brady on the course and taught him to make videos, he'd be good at it. So I was sent on the course quite early on for someone in my role. Mm-hmm. And I did take to it. And when I came back, I was never sent back to online. I was kept as a video journalist for the rest of my days at the BBC because it was something that I had some aptitude for. So Emma was probably one of those people as well, a woman named Emma Agnew. There's a few others I can think of who are really big like that, but she did it a few times, I guess. So she can be one of mine.
Have you continued to make videos at all?
I dabble.
You should put some of them online.
Yeah.
That is fascinating, isn't it? The coincidences and how they come together. That's a bit even more amazing, because it's not, you don't just look in retrospect and go, oh wow, that worked out, or that was interesting. There were coincidences on the spot at the moment that enabled it to happen. There's an unpredictability to it, and then there's moments that swing. And so my idea is three 3 moments, 3 people, or something like that, where you just sort of, because that's, I mean, how long did it take you to tell that story then? Like that's a good meaty. I think.
Sorry, man, too long.
Yeah, that's right. That's all right. There weren't any moon references, so it was okay. I was with you.
Yeah.
But they,
Yeah.
it's an interesting way to try and, act 1, act 2, act 3 for your life or something like that.
Yeah, it's nice having it as acts, you're right. And preferably pick them from different eras and...
You're one of those people in my life as well. Like, it's sort of strange. Like, we were in class together for a year and we're indifferent to one another. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, randomly, we became friends. And we're doing this now, years later.
Yeah.
Things like that. They are... What enabled it? What happened? What changed? What moment? You know what I mean? It's fascinating. It just sort of sets the trajectory of your life. And suddenly I'm stuck here, pumping these out week after week.
It doesn't always have to be a good influence, does it?
That's right. Yeah. Got in with the wrong crowd early on.
That is true, though. There is potential for it to also be negative things. It's much nicer when it's uplifting and positive. But yeah, it could be. Yeah, here's the person who sent me down a bad path.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
I think because the moments are so often intertwined with people, you could probably just get away with 3 people or 3 moments. Just choose one of those 2. You probably don't need both because it's pretty rare that they're not intertwined. And it might be sort of overcomplicating it a little bit. Like it might be just cleaner and simpler having it as 3 people, 3 special people who,
What I like though is moving away from just talking about, this has been a really important person in my life, but to actually talk about it was a moment with that person.
Yeah, well, maybe the 3 moments is better then. And like picking deliberately obscure moments. Like I could pick the moment that 2 teenagers threw eggs at the Queen's Rolls-Royce. And really that's a bit of a long bow. I got the job for lots of other reasons.
Yeah.
But using that just as the point, as the little fulcrum point.
Yeah.
The moment these stupid teenagers, they didn't get in trouble. I think they just got a slap on the wrists. But using that innocuous moment, which means nothing to anyone. But I've gone back and looked at the news story from the day it happened, and the picture of the eggs on the Queen's Rolls-Royce and thought, that moment meant something to me. Like, look where it's led for me. Like, if I hadn't got that job at the BBC, I certainly wouldn't have got into filmmaking and video. And then that's become a big part of who I am.
Well, that's right. They could have if they hadn't, that's right. The kids, if they don't throw an egg that day, they could quite easily have picked something else that was obvious to, let's say, a person who knows the UK really well, like something, and you just would have looked silly or out of touch,
or it would have just made, or just that made me look extra good in the interview. It just made me stand out amongst a bunch of other people who were just as good as me. But I just had a really good interview. It just got the interview off on the right foot, and everything from there just flowed really well, and it became like an absolute breeze of a job interview. And I think it was because of that moment. Maybe I still would have got the job. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would have got a better job the next day. I don't know. But I just like how much. I just like that moment that means nothing to probably anyone except even those teenagers. It probably doesn't mean that much to anymore. But it still means something to me.
The funny thing is as well is that is the story that didn't happen. Like the person after you who was interviewed, who didn't get the job because you did, may have been twice the journalist you are, and might have gone on to do something really amazing that might have,
Who knows?
Informed the creation of cold fusion or saved the planet or revealed a story. Yeah, that's right.
I think maybe you're right. 3 moments might be a better idea than 3 people for that reason. So it doesn't just become mentors and things like that, and it becomes a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more serendipitous.
Yes. Yeah. Even just asking that question, of course, in this podcast idea, you give people time to prepare ahead of time. But if you were asking someone cold, what 3 moments, it would be interesting what your mind goes to. Maybe something at high school, something soon afterwards, something later in life. Fascinating to hear what comes quickly to mind.
Good one.
Maybe this is a moment, man. Maybe right now, this moment is one that we'll look back on and say, it was that moment when you told me that idea about that moment that did it.
Yeah. That was the episode when Brady first suggested Moon of the Week.
That's right.
And look what it's become now.
Your earlier suggestion to go back to episode 75 is probably a better one. That's the one that got me back to 75. Listen to it again and then this happened.
Did you have to do any secret words today?
Yes, and I've got one of them, right? And I haven't used it. And I forgot the other one, and I text a little while ago while you were, I don't know, telling some story, and to ask the daughter, what's your word? Because I've forgotten it, and she must be in bed because I haven't got a reply. But
So have you used the one you do know?
no is the answer.
Okay.
I was going to say not properly, but then I was like, no, not properly. Like, I haven't used it at all.
What would it have been if you'd used it properly?
Oh, I would have said something like, horses live in a stable.
Okay.
I'll tell you that this is a defining moment, and I'll capture it for posterity. This daughter was playing a game called Zelda, and loves this game. It's like an adventure game where you've got to work out clues and kill monsters and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And so Zelda was the word. And I said, no, I don't want to talk about a computer game. Or here I am mentioning a computer game. Like that's just, promotion or whatever. And you've got to be... But then right at that moment on the screen, it talked about a particular stable where you go and get a horse to then ride that horse to fulfill an adventure. And I said, what about stable? And she said, yes, that's a good one.
So you're suggesting the words now.
I think we should just do this retrospectively. I listen to the recording and go, well, there's a word I said. And then I
Suggest that to the girls.
just go, that's right. Say, I'm recording tomorrow night, girls. And how about...
Why don't you make Christian ministry your word this week?
That's right. Moon, outlaw.
You make moon your word, you're on a pretty safe ground. It's going to come up at some point in the episode.
That's true. That is true. That's true. Moon's your word every week.